Hello, in this video, I would like to share with you how to approach discuss type of questions in ECZ exam papers, English language paper 1. So basically the paper comes with two sections. Section A, where we have quite a number of questions, and section B, where we have a guided composition. So our main interest is just under section A. Okay, so section A usually has quite a number of questions, of course, and some of these argumentative compositions, maybe descriptive, narrative, and so on and so forth. Usually, a discussed type of a question is part of those questions that are given under section A. So by discussed type of questions, we mean these are questions that are phrased as statements, and then they are attached with a word discuss at the end for one to discuss, like we have here as our three examples: example 1, 2, and 3. Now, how do we approach such type of questions? That's the question to ask. So the first thing is to identify key terms or phrases, like we have on the board. We have the dependent syndrome is a hindrance to development. Discuss. Now, the nature of these questions is actually reflective of the things that we go through in our society or what we see in the environment, communities where we come from. Look, for example, we have dependent syndrome as our key phrase. Then we also have hindrance as our key term and development. So we have to discuss whatever we want to in line with these key terms. So what do? We reflect on how individuals become to be dependent on other individuals for their survival. We can also talk about how communities become dependent on other communities or government officials or just government. Then we can also talk about how nations become dependent on other nations. For example, Zambia with its relationships with other countries like China, the United States, and so on and so forth. So those are just clues which I've provided. You can discuss it at individual level and it ends there. Those are just the clues on how you can approach such type of a question, depending on how far you can go in your thinking or brainstorming before attempting this question. The second one is growing up with a single parent is hard. Equally, here we also identify some key terms. For example, we have growing up as a phrase, right? Growing up, then we have single parent, then we have hard. Okay, we do have such kind of experiences where um, children are usually brought up or raised by single parents. We have heard of a girl child who was raised by an uncle, so to say, in the process of being raised up or throughout her life and so on and so forth. Maybe she might have been raped at some stage, okay, in her life, so to say. So those are just examples that are reflective of the certain things that people go through in society. You can pick on such and then discuss. Remember, even though the question demands us to talk about, a person who has been raised by a single parent, we are looking at it from the perspective of the experience being had. And an example of a girl child is actually a definite or a clear one. This is just an example. You can look out for other examples in which children may have challenges being raised by a single parent. We go to the next one. Early marriages should not be condoned in our society. Early marriages should not be condoned in our society. We identify key terms and phrases again. So, for example, we have early marriages, then we have not be condoned, and the society. Usually, such kind of issues again are reflective of what we go through in our society. Out there, especially in rural areas, children do discontinue from schooling resulting from early marriages, and these are usually practiced by young people who are not even ready for marriages or anything to do with the marital status or affairs, I mean, and so on and so forth. So we identify first of all what it means by early marriages. Like we said, these are young people who are not even ready for marriage or anything to do with the marriage. They're not being condoned, not being allowed, not being entertained, not being encouraged, and so on and so forth. The society is where we come from. Now, I tried to identify these um, repercussions or rather consequences, okay, that could result from early marriages. No wonder it should not be condoned. So we have quite a number of these. Remember, as we discussed these, they should be in line with how the question has been phrased. Why should it not be condoned? Why shouldn't? Why should early marriages not be condoned? That's how we are discussing these points. So we have the first one, which is school dropout. We know for a fact that when young people engage themselves in early marriages, the end result is school dropout because the girl child may not be able to continue with her academics in her status quo. The same can also apply to a boy child. Maybe the school can, put up some punitive measures, or rather just measures to, handle such kind of issues. It could be suspension, it could be expulsion, it could be some other kind of a challenge that may come up in order to handle maybe another pregnant child who is a girl in this particular case. Okay, being there for her, that's what we mean. Okay, so such kind of issues could lead to school dropout because both may not be allowed in school. Rather, they may be given some time to look after the pregnancy and so on and so forth. The second one is unplanned families. Like we mentioned before, that for example, after having being engaged in maybe sexual activities and all that, then the girl child gets pregnant and all that. These people, both the boy and the girl, are not actually ready for a family. Therefore, the end result is unplanned families because they are not financially stable, they are not emotionally ready, spiritually, maturity, and so on and so forth. There are quite a number of things that we may consider for people to be ready for a family, so to say. So, in the case of a boy child and a girl, they are not ready. We may talk about that again in a single paragraph, okay, or so, but separated from the first point. Then we can also talk about increase in street kids, which could be the end result of unplanned families. The two, the the boy child and the girl child, or these young adults, may not be able to actually um, look after the children that they are going to bear or have, so to say. So that may lead to increase in street kids, and we have seen how street kids, you know, are all over the streets as a result of unplanned families because they're not looked after, they're not provided with basic needs and other ones, and so on and so forth. So we may discuss that in a paragraph on its own. Then we go to poverty and the suffering. We know for a fact that when there are quite a number of street kids in the street, that leads to poverty, because those children who are not looked after, they may end up suffering per se. Why? They do not have access to quite a number of things, such as basic needs, like we said. Once they're not going to school, they may end up being criminals as they try to source for handouts or money for survival, and so on and so forth. So basically, that's what I had for you in this particular video on how to approach, discuss type of questions in English Paper 1 ECZ final exams. Thank you so much for watching the video. Please do subscribe to my YouTube channel. You are always welcome for more content videos.